I think they're doing a great job. And these experts are really, really crucial. And substantively, they're important. But, Michael, you never want the presentation to take away from the substance of the expert. And honestly, I asked your producer while I was off and we were watching the testimony, is this an experienced attorney? I don't think I've ever asked that question before. And I mean no disrespect to the gentleman, but the questions are unwieldy. The prosecutor is dominating the courtroom. The prosecutor is being allowed to give speaking objections, which I would, in other words, he's not maintaining any control, and he's letting the prosecutor beat him up and make him look ineffective. And I don't think that that's a good strategy in front of the jury. So I'm sorry to take a little bit of a tangent here. We really don't know. This guy seems squared away. They're putting expert testimony on. Ultimately, that's what's most important. But boy, the presentation is confusing me a little bit. They're calling this guy out of turn to begin with. Now they can't get the conclusion they want because they haven't laid the proper foundation. But the prosecutor may be tricky by half in getting themselves in trouble here, because the jury, they're the people that make the decision, and they can be saying, what's so bad here that the prosecutor doesn't want this to come out? And so sometimes when I was a prosecutor, I back off objections because I know in the end they're going to be able to get the foundation, quote unquote. That's a technical thing for the most part. Very rarely is it going to preclude the testimony, but I may create a giant out of something that was just an ant. Who knows?
Listen, that's what I wanted to talk about before, because it sounded like to me you were saying that all those objections were something that was really making the defense attorney look less powerful or less important, or hit whatever he was saying as being not as impactful. But I was going to say there's so many of them, and they've been so adamant about these objections, it would have the effect you're talking about, that it's actually highlighting some of this evidence that I was wondering if it might be something that you would consider drawing back on, because again, a lot of them didn't go anywhere. Eventually, they were able to overcome the objections and things moved on, but they became highlighted information.
Yeah, I think you could. I don't think it has to be a binary choice here. I think it could be both things. And in the end analysis, he is getting it out. She looks like she's kind of like the smarty pants in the room. You just don't want that as a prosecutor. I was very judicious with stopping the defense from getting things out for two reasons. One, appellate reasons. And secondly, I didn't want the jury to feel that I was afraid of some evidence that's coming out. And I also didn't want to come off as being a wise guy in front of the jury. And I think that she's got the capacity to do that. She's getting away with murder, in my opinion. I'm just telling you myself, stylistically, as a defense lawyer, would never. This is Bob Bianchi now. There's lots of ways to skin a cat, but I would never let her be making these speaking objections, constant objections and interruptions without some pushback to the judge say, enough, judge, put some reins in on her.